some people came and covered me with a thin sheet of ice. And I felt so cool. But poor auntie, she died. So all that time, what was Prahlad doing? Chanting, remembering. He wasn't even asking, Krishna, please save me. Just remembering and knowing that I'm in the hands of Krishna, I'm dependent on Krishna, and he'll do what he likes. When we were painting for the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, back in 1976, we would always write Prabhupada letters or show him our sketches and ask him what different things looked like. So we asked, what was it like when Prahlad was thrown off that cliff? And Prabhupada said, you can show Krishna, little invisible, catching Krishna in the sky in his arms.
Catching Prahlad.
Catching Prahlad, yeah. So as Gurudev explained, who is Lord Nrsimhadev? He's Krishna's mercy. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. When we have the Abhishek ceremony, we'll be singing the Dasavatar Stotram. At the beginning of every avatar incarnation, Gurudev always has the devotees sing the Dasavatar Stotram, but because we're doing Abhishek, we'll sing it afterwards. Once on Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day, Gurudev even told for a few minutes of each of the Das avatars. It was Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day, but Gurudev took a few minutes to explain each of the 10 avatars. That is Vamandev and Varaha, Parasuram, and all of them. So, I'm going to share with you some of Srila Gurudev's lectures, which he gave on this day. Asha Didi asked me to tell something different. She said, we all know the story of how Prahlad was in the womb of his mother, and Narada Muni stopped Indra and the demigods from killing the mother and the baby. And for 60,000 years, he explained to Prahlad in the womb the glories of the Lord. And so Prahlad came out. He was already Mahabhagavat, but he came out even more and more strengthened. She said, we all know the story of how Hiranyakashipu was furious because Lord Varaha had just killed his brother, Hiranyaksha. And now he was determined to take revenge. He said, that tricky, clever Vishnu, I will separate his head from his trunk. And as soon as I do that, then all those who are dependent on him, like the Brahmanas, all those who are performing sacrificial rites and fires for religious benefit of the world, they will all die in misery. How dare he kill my brother like that? So, at that time, in order to become strong enough to defeat Lord Vishnu, his bitter enemy, you all know how he performed severe penances, and for 60,000 years, and he was standing on his toes and becoming so thin, and fire was coming out of his head, and rays were coming out of his head, and he was becoming so powerful that all the planetary systems were coming out of order, and the whole universe was afraid. Then he became so thin that he was just bones, and he was maintaining his life within his bones. Finally, Brahma came and gave the benediction. You'll not be killed. Why am I telling it, even though I'm telling what she told me not to tell? There's a reason. It's because Srila Gurudev explained in one of his lectures that not only did Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur say that everyone must read this 7th canto history of Prahlad Maharaj, but Gurudev said he himself lectured on the pastime 108 times at least. That's why I'm referring to it here and there, though I will share new things as well. Gurudev said, you want to become gopis? First you have to become like Prahlad Maharaj. As tolerant as Prahlad Maharaj, as fearless as Prahlad Maharaj, never afraid of all those tortures, always remembering the protection of the Lord like Prahlad Maharaj, and also compassionate like Prahlad Maharaj. How? His father tried to kill him in so many ways, as you've just heard, and as you've been hearing for years. And then what happened? After Lord Nrsimhadev killed his father, and he asked, what benediction you want? I'm so sorry that I came late. You were remembering me for a long time, and you were being tortured for a long time. But it took me such a long time to come. Please forgive me. I want to make up for my offense of coming late by giving you any benediction. And you know what he was doing to Prahlad? He was licking him, because he's a lion. So he was licking all over Prahlad Maharaj's body. So Prahlad said, am I a merchant that I serve you for some benefit? I don't want anything. So Lord Nrsimha said, I asked you, I told you I'm giving a benediction, my words cannot prove false. So you must take a benediction. Okay, then let my father be liberated, even though he was so against you. So Lord Nrsimhadev said, not only your father, but 21 generations forward and back, they'll all be liberated. And anybody who hears this history of your devotion to me, he will also be liberated. Just another instance of how Gurudev wanted the same thing repeated over and over again is every time it was a Badger festival practically, every single time, especially when he was giving a class and it was Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day, he would say, tomorrow I want a drama about Lord Nrsimhadev. Not only that, he rigged his sannyasis. I was in so many cities, in so many countries. In KL, where is that? KL, Kuala Lumpur. And in Australia. And just about in every city that Gurudev was in, he would tell the story of Prahlad, and he'd rig his sannyasis. They'd all have their pre-planned role. So like once, Gurudev was telling about Prahlad teaching his classmates. And now I will take that cue to pass out these papers to you all. These are some verses of Prahlad Maharaj that he taught to his fellow students, that he told his father.
Just take one and pass it around.
Yeah. Okay. These are very, very important verses that Gurudev would often quote when he's telling the history and character of Prahlad Maharaj. Whoops, I don't have one for myself. I got one too. Thanks. Okay. So when Prahlad Maharaj is teaching his students, all of a sudden, Hiranyakashipu, and this happened on the very first time that Vasantidasi ever met Gurudev. She came to the Rama Hotel in the year 2000 when Gurudev was giving a lecture on Lord Nrsimhadev. And when Prahlad was speaking to his son, to his students, and there was a little kirtan, right? Prahlad got his students to chant, his fellow students. He said, I want to teach you this. And he was trying to teach them the Maha Mantra. And they said, Prahlad, this is too hard. It's too long. So Prahlad said, okay, then just repeat after me. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And then they had a big uproarious kirtan. And then all of a sudden, Ashram Maharaj takes his cue. He's Hiranyakashipu, and he comes in, he starts screaming, "Stop that horrible music!" And Vasanti's thinking, "What's going on here? What music is this?" And then sometimes Shroti Maharaj plays Nrsimhadev, and Sajan Maharaj will play Hiranyakashipu. And so in every city, it's different sannyasis jumping into Gurudev's lectures and acting out the part. And in the big microphone, screaming, "Rah!" Shroti Maharaj is Nrsimhadev, and sometimes he has a mask.
In Badger, 2001, there
Yeah.
was a mask, like they have a Nrsimha avatar,
Yeah.
face mask, right? Yeah.
So Gurudev wanted this again and again. But still, I will tell some different things. Srila Gurudev explained on one Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day that we don't worship Krishna's different incarnations on their days. We generally don't spend a lot of time worshiping them. We may speak a little bit, and Lord Nrsimhadev we worship all year round. He said if there's any danger, any fear, any obstacle in your bhakti, just chant to Lord Nrsimhadev and he'll save you. He said we don't generally worship other incarnations, but Ramchandra we worship on his appearance day, and Lord Nrsimhadev we worship. So he said in one other lecture that generally we hear about Prahlad's childhood pastimes with Lord Nrsimhadev. He said, so I would like to tell about Prahlad's adult pastimes. So once, and the glory, I would like to tell about the glory of Prahlad in his adult time. He said, you know the story of Vamandev, how he came as a young dwarf Brahmin and begged 3 steps of land from Bali Maharaj, how Bali Maharaj gave those 3 steps of land, and how Lord Vamandev covered the whole universe. And then, after he took everything from Bali Maharaj, he arrested him with a snake noose of a snake, and then sent him down to one of these subterranean planets, Sutam. So, the interesting thing about this is that not only did he send Bali Maharaj there, but he himself came and expanded himself into 50 Vishnu forms of Vamandev as his doorkeeper at the request of Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj said, I want that every time I leave my palace and come back, from no matter which door I'm coming in or out, I will be able to see you. So Vamandev became the servant of Bali Maharaj. Why? Because Bali Maharaj is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. So it's his glory that Vamandev showed so much mercy to Bali Maharaj. Another time, when Ravana was searching the world for enemies, he came to Sutal, the abode of Bali Maharaj, and he said, I want to fight with you. I'm challenging you to a fight. So Vishnu was standing there, and with his toe, he barely touched Ravana, and Ravana immediately flew to Lanka. He was kicked by the bare touch of his toe. And Gurudev said, why did Lord Vishnu do that? Because of Prahlad Maharaj. Another time, in Dwarka,
No, Didi, I don't understand. Like, why?
because Bali Maharaj is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. So to protect...
But Ravan, when he kicked Ravan, like, what was the glory in that of Prahlad Maharaj?
He protected Bali Maharaj. Another time, there was this big demon named Kush, who came with his men to attack Dwarka. But it so happened that Krishna wasn't there in Dwarka, because he was with Bali Maharaj as his doorkeeper. So they begged Durvasa Muni to find, you know where Krishna is, you're a great devotee of his, please find Krishna and beg him to come back to Dwarka and protect his city and his citizens, his devotees. So Durvasa Muni, being a great mystic yogi, he came to the abode of Bali Maharaj and begged Bali Maharaj, please ask Vishnu, he's like your servant here, please beg him to come back to Dwarka and save all of his citizens. So Bali Maharaj said, what can I do? Even Brahma and Shiva can't order him around. He's the Supreme Lord. How can I order him? In fact, I won't order him. I want him to stay here. So how did Bali Maharaj have such power? Because he's the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. Once, when Prahlad Maharaj was the ruler of the kingdom in his adulthood, you know the king would always go around his kingdom to make sure everything is all right. So he was roaming in the forest, and he saw one man, one sage, wearing the clothes of a renunciate, and wearing matted locks. But although he had the clothes of a renunciate and the hair of a renunciate, he was carrying a bow and arrows. So one of the duties of a king is to maintain the varnashram system, the social and spiritual orders of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. And the king sees that everyone is doing his duty. So he saw this person who's looks like half and half sage Brahmin with his hair and clothing in the forest and carrying a bow and arrow. So Prahlad challenged him that, look, which one are you? Either be a Brahmin or be a Kshatriya. Don't be both. And if you want to be both, then you have to challenge me to a fight, because I'm not going to accept that you're going to be both. You'll have to defeat me and fight. So he said, okay, I'll defeat you and fight. So they had a big battle between the two of them, with bows and arrows and other weapons. And the first day, Prahlad couldn't defeat him. Second day, couldn't defeat him. Third day, he's wondering, who is this person? So Prahlad, being a great devotee, he's also a great mystic. So Prahlad sat down in silence, in meditation, and he saw, because he worshipped Lord Nrsimhadev's deity every morning, he saw that the garland that he had given Lord Nrsimhadev in the morning was now, this is in his vision, was now on this sage Kshatriya. So he thought, oh, he's my Lord Nrsimhadev. So he immediately fell at Lord Nrsimhadev's feet in the form of this sage, and he said, oh, you have defeated me. Now I understand why I couldn't defeat you. So Lord Nrsimhadev said, no, I'm always defeated by you. I'm always defeated by your love and devotion. And then that sage revealed himself as Lord Nrsimhadev. So who is Lord Nrsimhadev? I was like doubly thrilled when Sudarshan Prabhu came. First of all, because he's himself, and second of all, because his name is Sudarshan. And so I was remembering that Gurudev said, who is Lord Nrsimhadev? He's none other than Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra. Like we utter glories to Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Prabhu Ki Jai. Who is that Sudarshan Prabhu? He's Lord Nrsimhadev. When Krishna killed Shishupal with his Sudarshan Chakra, that was Lord Nrsimhadev doing it. When Durvasa Muni tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj, and Ambarish Maharaj was simply meditating on the pastimes of the Lord and thinking, if Krishna wants me to live, I'll live. If he wants me to die, I'll die. And he was weeping, shedding tears of ecstasy, remembering the Lord's pastimes. But Lord Vishnu had already made a promise that anyone who's surrendered to me, I will protect them with my Sudarshan chakra. So as you know, he immediately sent that Sudarshan chakra, who chased Durvasa Muni all over the three worlds, even to Vaikuntha. So who is that Sudarshan chakra? That's Lord Nrsimhadev. This isn't the first time that Krishna's weapons become incarnations. For example, the two brothers of Lord Ram, that is Bharat and Shatrughna, are the conch and club of Krishna. So they're also the weapons. Now, I'm going to tell you another thing from Gurudev, which Vasanti and I, just by accident, heard on the big YouTube screen when we were in Anjali and Damodar Prabhu's house a couple of weeks ago. He said, I'm going to tell you a very deep meaning of Sudarshan. Because we had already learned from Srila Gurudev that all the incarnations of Krishna have part of his form, Krishna in Vrindavan, Brajendranandan Shyamsundar. All the incarnations are part of the form of Brajendranandan Shyamsundar, and also they have part of his name. Just like Ananta, you know Ananta, who Lord Nrsimhadev sat on. Sheshanag. So the original Ananta is Krishna, Brajendranandan Shyamsundar, and he gave part of that name, part of that form to Baladev, and a part of that form to Sheshanag, who holds all the planetary systems on his hoods. So similarly, the original Nrsimha is Krishna in Vrindavan. You all have that songbook? One of the songs to Lord Nrsimha is what? There's the usual, Namaste Nrsimha, Ito Nrsimha, Parito Nrsimha. And then there's another one? Huh? What is it? Bhagishaya. You all can open to it? What page is it on?
The last page of the...
It's the last page of the Mangalacharana. You mostly have it?
Page 15 in the yellow.
Okay. Bhagishaya Varane. Together? Bhagishaya Varane. Lakshmi Chavakshase Dishaste Hridaye Samvish Tam Nrsimham Maham Bhaje. Indulekha, what's the meaning? Loud.
In his mouth, the goddess Sudha Sarasvati is always present. On his chest, Lakshmi Devi always sports. And within his heart, special affection for his devotees is always manifest. I worship that Nrsimhadev.
Thank you. So the original Nrsimhadev, the original Sudarshan, is Krishna in Vrindavan. We know that there's scratching going on in Goloka Vrindavan too.
Scratching?
Yeah. Nrsimhadev, his nails.
Right.
So the original scratching goes on in Vrindavan. Also, Sudarshan. Su means very good. Sudarshan means looking or glancing. So the loving, affectionate glances of Krishna upon his devotees in Vrindavan is the original Sudarshan. Is that amazing?
That is.
Just like when Krishna played his flute and the gopis came, and Krishna glanced over the gopis and he said, "Oh, so you've come to see the beautiful gardens? Now that you've seen them, you can go home. Because a woman should be chaste, after all, to her husband. That's the highest position of a chaste wife. So many times. Another time, Kutila was coming to the kunj where Krishna and the gopis were sitting. So Krishna glanced over the gopis. He said, "Don't worry, I will immediately disguise myself as Abhimanyu, the so-called husband of Radharani, and I will take Kutila away." And he had so many discussions with Kutila. When Krishna comes home after cowherding, Mother Yasoda offers him the water of her tears. Then she wipes that with the cloth of her veil. And so Krishna is getting arati from Mother Yasoda. She's doing a lamp to see if Krishna has any scratches. And then she wipes it away and washes it away and dries it. But Krishna's glance is over towards the gopis who are standing at a distance, who are doing arti to Krishna with their glance. So the original Sudarshan, the original Nrsimhadev, is in Goloka Vrindavan. Although, at the same time, we were all in Badger. I remember when KK was just a little tot. And it was back in 1996. How old were you then? 11. And Gurudev came to Badger for the first time. And he was sitting there in the temple room by the deities. And he said, when you sing Mangal Arti, don't sing Lord Nrsimhadev's mantra after Mangal Arti. Because Gurudev was teaching us that everybody's real. The gopis are real. The forest of Vrindavan is real. Nrsimhadev is real. So if you call for Nrsimhadev after Mangal Arti, when all the gopis and Krishna is there in the forest, everybody will run away. They'll go hide in the bushes. So what lessons did we learn? Are we learning from the story of Prahlad Maharaj? Anybody would like to call out? We never have to be...
You have to be patient, very patient.
Patient? How is he patient?
Because his father... Yeah, tell.
Because he was waiting for Nrsimhadev to come.
He knew that Nrsimhadev was already there, protecting him. When his father said, "Oh, Prahlad, where do you get all your power from? We throw you down a cliff, we throw you in a pot of oil, and you never get hurt. Where do you get all your power from?" So Prahlad said, "Oh, Father, I get my power from the same place you get your power, from the Lord Vishnu." So Hiranyakashipu said, "Oh, really? Where is your God?" And Prahlad said, "My God is everywhere." And then Hiranyakashipu said, he looked over at the pillar and he said, "Is he in that pillar?" And Prabhupada said, Prahlad looked and he saw Lord Nrsimhadev peeping out of the pillar. He said, "Of course he's in the pillar." And that's when he smashed the pillar. So the point is, he already knew that the Lord is everywhere protecting him. Yeah.
Did you know that form of Nrsimhadev was in the pillar, or was he seeing Krishna in the pillar?
Well,
what form was he actually,
staying in the pillar?
Yes.
I can't say, I don't know.
Because we had some discussion about this.
Okay.
Mukunda Prabhu was mentioning.
No problem.
What do you know?
Well, no, he was just mentioning that actually Prahlad Maharaj, he knew he was being protected and that the Lord wasn't actually coming to save Prahlad.
Oh.
He was coming because the two gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay, said
Mm-hmm.
he came, and it was a whole description.
Yes, you all know about that, of course. Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, he can have mock fights with his friends, no problem. Because he forgets that he's God, and his friends forget that he's God. And as Gurudev told the story, Sridham and Krishna were wrestling. Sridham won, and he said, "Look, I won." And Krishna said, "No, I won." Sri Ram said, how did you win? I'm sitting on top of you. So Krishna said, because my nose is up and your nose is down. So he can fight there, mock fight with his friends. But then his plenary portion, Lord Vishnu, he wants to fight, but he can't fight because everybody is worshipping him in Vaikuntha as God. So, two of his devotees, Jai and Vijay, the gatekeepers, they wanted to please him. They knew about his desire, and they wanted to please him. But they can't fight with him there. So, Lord Vishnu inspired them to commit a so-called offense to the 4 Kumaras and not allow them into the Vaikuntha planet, into the gate. So it was because of Lord Vishnu's desire to fight that they were cursed by the 4 Kumaras to come for 3 births as... Who? Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and Shishupal and Dantavakra. Right, so, and then Jagai Maharaj, Lord Chaitanya. So, as Bhumipati Prabhu said, he didn't have to come for Prahlad. Prahlad's already protected. But he came to fight with, to have his mock fight with his devotee, Hiranyakashipu. And just to prove that he's accepting that service of his devotee, after the fight, after he ripped out his intestines, he sat on his devotee's throne, accepting his throne as his devotee's offering. So we can learn tolerance, patience, compassion from Prahlad. Anything else?
Is that why he put the entrails as the garland?
He took the what do you call it? Intestines, and wore it as a garland. He took that fight as the offering of his devotee. Good, thank you.
Heart as well.
Huh? And his heart.
Because the bhakti was so full of bhakti, because in actuality, without the pleasure, without that ability, because they were engaged in bhakti and anger, because they were always meditating on the Lord, but this was considered in the more higher realms bhakti, because it was actually pleasing to the Lord. Just like when Kaikeyi had to ban Lord Ram. So in that same way, because they want the pleasure of the Lord, that's still considered bhakti.
Very good definition of bhakti. It's not that Krishna is pleased, it's that your motive is pleasing. Because Chanur and Mustik, they were pleasing Krishna when they were wrestling with him, trying to kill him. He was in bliss in his mood of hero. But because their mood wasn't to please him, it wasn't bhakti. But Jain, Hiranyakashipu, their mood was...
Yeah, internally.
Internally, Jai and Vijay wanted to please the Lord. Good.
That was Yoga Maya covering.
It also showed, another thing that we learned from this history, is that birth doesn't matter. Prahlad was the son of a demon. Brahma was afraid to go and offer prayers. All the demigods were afraid. So they asked Lakshmi, the wife of Lord Nrsimhadev. She says, no, I've never seen him in this featured form. He's too scary, and I'm not going. But Prahlad, who was the son of the demon, he was able to pacify the Lord with prayers. Another thing we learn is that nobody falls from Vaikuntha. If anybody would fall from Vaikuntha, therefore this philosophy is very insidious, that we fell from Vaikuntha, because thinking that Vaikuntha is a place I can fall from, I can't have the enthusiasm to go there if I'm thinking there's Maya there. So Srila Gurudev explained that not only didn't Jai and Vijay fall from Vaikuntha, they came here to please the Lord, but their post wasn't vacant. They remained as Jai and Vijay in Vaikuntha, and their expansions came as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha.
So they always remained.
Huh? They always remained there. Now, because we only have 5 minutes left, huh? Trying to keep it scheduled. I want to ask you if we can say these prayers together, the Sanskrit and the English. First, let's do what? Mahaprabhu. Right. Ashaji wants another new story about Nrsimhadev. So, when Lord Chaitanya was here, he was sitting and hearing from Srivas Pandit the 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. And when Srivas Pandit came to the name of Lord Nrsimhadev, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately came into the mood of Lord Nrsimhadev. And he picked up a club and he started running through the streets as though he was going to kill everybody. And everybody ran, afraid for their lives, and ran into their homes. And then Srivas brought him back, and Lord Chaitanya was so much lamenting that to give other living entities fear is a great offense, and that's what I have done. So Srivas Pandit said, no, you haven't committed any offense. Anybody who simply remembers you becomes free from 10 million offenses. So these are some different pastimes. So let's say together, this first one is when, this doesn't have a translation for some reason, but when Hiranyakashipu said to Prahlad, what is the best thing? Can somebody, okay. What is the best thing you learned in school today? Prahlad said, I learned that anyone who has as the center of his life his family and not Krishna, he's always completely overwhelmed with anxieties. He's like in a blind well. And Gurudev very often tells that story. You all know the story of the man who fell in the well, so no need to say it, but I said it just as just to remember. And so what should one do? Go to Vrindavan. Leave everything and go to Vrindavan, which means he can go to Vrindavan in his heart as well. Which reminds me, Rajiv told me, I said, I remember the last time I saw you was in Brajmandal Parikrama with the little kids when they were so small. So he said, yes, but I haven't been there since Gurudev's disappearance. So I said, okay, in the class I will tell you all how Gurudev said to read his books in such a way that you can be wherever the book is. You take the book, this goes for Brajmandal Parikrama book. You take, let's say we're taking this book, and you begin. KK, you can say it.
Oh, my dear book.
No.
What are we saying?
Oh, my dear Prabhu.
Oh, my dear Prabhu.
You are not a book.
You're not a book.
And then you go like that and like that. You are, in this case, Srila Prabhupada yourself. You are Sukadeva yourself. You are Narada yourself. You are Parikshit Maharaj yourself, because you're telling the story of Lord Nrsimhadev. You're Lord Nrsimhadev and Prahlad yourself. And I'm sitting here at your feet, O Sukadeva Goswami, hearing this Leela from you directly. You're personally telling it to me. Please, all of you that I just mentioned, all of you shower your mercy on me so that I can be free from all doubts in the Siddhanta, and every one of your teachings becomes revealed in my heart. So this goes for all the pastime places of Brajmandala too. You're praying, you are not a book, you are all the places, and you are all personalities. Please bestow your mercy on me and my family, so that all the Siddhanta and the pastimes of all these holy places comes into our heart. Gurudev said all the big scholars of Mathura and Vrindavan, they come to me, even though they can recite upside down and backwards all the Vedic literatures, they come to me with their questions on bhakti. Why? Because I pray like this. He said, if you don't pray like this and you just simply read, okay, here it is, I'm going to understand what I'm reading, he said you'll be full of doubts. And if you read like this, all Siddhanta will come in your heart. So without further ado, so we'll sing the first verse together. Shri Prahlad Vacha Tat Sadhu Manye Suravarja Dehinam Sada Samudvigna Tiyama Sadgraha Idvatma Patam Grihamanda Kupam Vanam gato yad dharmashrayita. Next. Shri Prahlad Vacha Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vedanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam Iti Purusarpita Vishnu Bhaktis Lakshana Kriyeta Bhagavatyada Tanmanyeditam Uttamam. Who's going to read the English?
Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj said, hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him. In other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge.
Next together. Shri Prahlad Vacha Matirna Krishna Parata Swatoma Mito Vipradyeta Vihavartanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamashram Punat Punashcharvitacharva. And when Hiranyakashipu heard this, threw him off the cliff. Let's hear what he said. Anybody?
Prahlad Maharaj replied, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly choose.
Oh yeah.
Repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations towards Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both.
And Sudarshan Prabhu just corrected me because actually Prahlad said 3 verses. It was after the 3rd one that they threw him off the cliff. So now we're going to say the 2nd one together. Nate vidu svartakati vishnu Gaurasayaje Vairartamanina Andayatandayarupaniyamas Tepishatantra Gandhivaya. Somebody English?
Go ahead.
Louder.
Who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to an external sense object, could not understand the goal of life is to return back to where was I? Man-miss.
Turn back to home.
Oh, Godhead. And engage in the service of Lord Vishnu as a blind man guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch. Materially attached men led by another strong cords. And they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering their full miseries.
Okay, this is the last one we're going to do because I don't want to hold up the Abhishek. And this was the clincher that threw him off the cliff. Naisham Matistavaru Ramangrim Sprishakyanarto Paramo Yadarta Mahiya Sampada Rajo Bhishekam Niskinchanana Navamita.
Unless they smear upon their bodies.
Yeah, this is the one.
Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a
Louder.
Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava completely free from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activity. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way can one be freed from...
You can imagine how Hiranyakashipu was feeling. So we're going to keep going? Okay. Our fearless leader said, keep going. Now this is what Prahlad was teaching his classmates when it was the tiffin hour and the teachers left and said, Prahlad, these boys are ruckus, they'll create a big havoc unless you be there as the monitor. So Prahlad said, Sri Prahlad Vacha Komaram Acharet Pragyo Dharmam Bhavataniya Durlabam Manisam Janma Tadam
Everybody wants to.
Prahlad Maharaj said, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all the other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in a human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection.
Gurudev said, the boy said, but Prahlad, we're too young. Wait till we get older. Now is the time to play. And Prahlad said, no, now. Now that you're a child, you don't have any attachments. The older you get, the more attached you get. You get attached to your studies. Gurudev said, I have my garden. Who's going to water my plants if I go and do bhajan? If I go to Brajmandal Parikrama? I have a dog. I have a cat. How can I leave? So the older you get, the more attachments you get. So now, fellow students. And then we're going to skip to the last verse. Wait. No, let's do this one, because Gurudev loved to explain this one about Prahlad's verse 2. Sukhamandriyakam daitya deha yogin dehinam sarvatra lagyate daivad yata dukham ayatmaha.
Prahlad Maharaj continued.
Louder.
My dear friends, born of demoniac families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life, according to one's past fruitive activity. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress.
So why bother to look for happiness? Just as distress comes without endeavor, so does happiness. It's going to come automatically. So friends, Prahlad is saying, just spend your time in Krishna consciousness and experience the highest happiness. And these two verses, the next and last ones, Gurudev loves so much. It includes everything. Here we go. Guru Shushashaya Bhaktya Sarvalabharpanena Cha Sangena Sadhu Bhaktanam Ishvaraya Cha Shradaya Tatkatayam Cha Kirtanaya Gunakarmanam Tatpadam Puruhadyanat Talingesham. Somebody?
One must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master, and in the association of saintly persons and devotees one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord with faith, glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on the Lord's lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastra and Guru.
Thank you. Shringa Bhagavan ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Just a 2-second announcement. Tomorrow, you're still doing it?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Vasanti and a few other ladies have organized a Harinam party. They were going to go to Baltimore for the Harinam party, but decided against it because it takes too long to get there. So, for the peace and happiness of Baltimore and Nepal and the entire Earth planet, there's going to be a Harinam party. Vasanti will make the announcement.
And we haven't. We haven't decided when or where. Okay, by the end of Prashad, we'll have decided when and where.
It'll be book distribution and Harinam. And where will it be? How can I make an announcement if I don't have anything to say?
Alita, I don't know New York.
Well, they'll figure it out and make an announcement after Shabbos.
Maybe in front of Matchless Gifts.
Okay. And if somebody likes, you can make a big sign and saying, "For the peace and happiness of Baltimore, Nepal, and the planet." For Premanandi. And also it's in the honor of Nrsimha Dev, and also tomorrow is it tomorrow?
Oh, yeah.
Is the divine appearance day of Radharaman Deity, the self-manifesting deity of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So in honor of all that, big Harinam party tomorrow. Huh? What? Yes, thank you for coming all the way from Ithaca, Ladini Shakti and Manjari. They came 5 hours traveling just to come and be with you all. Longer? They got stuck in traffic? Wow. Okay, we have to end here because of Abhishek. And Damodar and Anjali, thank you coming all the way from New York. Despite the... And Malachi came all the way from White Plains. Thank you. And originally from North Carolina.
From New Jersey.
Okay. So, oh yes, and just to let you know, we have posters, newly printed posters.